Hello students, this is Professor McDermott with the video recap of your Module 6 discussions on nationalism. Group 1 had a document by Adam Mickiewicz, who was Polish. He was writing in the 1830s in the aftermath of the three partitions of Poland, which had dismembered his country among Prussia, Russia, and Austria-Hungary. And in this document, Mickiewicz really talks about the plight of the Polish people in very biblical language. And I asked Group 1, why did they think that he had chosen this type of religious language? Tatiana Jones, who did a nice job as chair, had a good individual post on this one. She wrote, "It breathed religious spirituality into the cause of Polish nationalism. The Polish nation worshiped God, knowing that he who honored God giveth honor to everything that is good. The Polish nation, from the beginning to the end, was true to the God of its ancestors. Kings and men of knightly rank never assaulted any believing nation. Polish kings went to the defense of Christians in distant lands." And yes, that was certainly how the Polish people saw themselves, as a nation that was very special to God, almost like a chosen people of God. And part of that was because of their terrible suffering throughout history. And by the way, the Poles did not get their country back until after World War I. And so the Polish people had suffered a great deal, and they felt, in a way, as the Jewish people felt, that they had been chosen by God for a very special role in history. But Tatiana, I like what you said about how Mickiewicz breathed religious spirituality into the cause of Polish nationalism. What you see with this document really is nationalism becoming almost like a religious fervor. And there were times when nationalism almost became a substitute religion for some people. All right, moving on to question 2, I asked, what does Mickiewicz's type of nationalism have to do with Poland's past and Europe's future? And Lakeisha Grimsley, you had a very good post on this. You said, Mickiewicz's nationalism relates to Poland's past and future because, in the beginning, there was freedom of the people. But due to the sins the people committed, their power was coming to an end. So when the Polish nation lies in the grave to resurrect again, the wars will cease. The Polish nation did not die, but gained power to end wars in the future. And Jerquisha Gilbert had additional insight into this. Mickiewicz believed that Poland was like Christ, and that although they were martyred, they were going to be the ones to arise on the third day and free Europe from slavery, just like Jesus did. All right, so here again you see the Poles are aware of their own suffering as a people. And Mickiewicz is saying this makes us like Christ, the Polish people, almost like a Christ figure. And like Christ, according to Christian belief, who died and then was resurrected, the Polish nation had to die first in the partitions and then be resurrected. And when that happened, the consequences would be great. The end of war and the establishment of universal peace throughout Europe through the agency of the Polish people. So you see this messianic intensity of Mickiewicz. Finally, Mickiewicz talks about the concept of interest, which was very current at the time. Adam Smith and thinkers similar to him talk about how people act in their own enlightened self-interest during this period. But Mickiewicz takes a more negative view of this, and in your group answer you address this. When Mickiewicz referred to the idol of interest, he meant that other nations, besides Poland, were not putting God first anymore. He was opposed to it because people were only interested in their own personal gain and success. Trade and money were at the heart of people. Yeah, so here again, Mickiewicz is saying Poland is unique. All the other nations are just pursuing their own selfish interests, but Poland is the only one that's thinking about the good of the whole. And so Polish nationalism is the purest form of nationalism. By the way, one of Mickiewicz's prophecies in his poetry was that a great Polish pope would be elected later in history. And fans of Mickiewicz think that prophecy was fulfilled with the election of Karol Wojtyła as Pope John Paul II in 1979. All right, moving on to Group 2. You had the Italian nationalist Giuseppe Mazzini, very important freedom fighter in Italy, and he talks about his concept of country. And I asked Group 2, what did that mean to Mazzini? Haley Rainey had a good post on this. Country is used a lot in this reading, and I feel that Mazzini is referring the country to the home of these people. I feel like he is saying that everyone must come together and work together to form this country, and once that is done, it would be a nation. So yes, Mazzini sees country as the collection of all the people in a particular place, but it's more than that. Country requires and demands that people work together as a community in order to build a nation. And if they do that, Mazzini thinks great things will happen, not just for the country, but for all of humanity. And I asked Group 2, what does Mazzini see as the relationship of country to the rest of humanity? And Aaron Ravago, you had a nice post here. Your first duty is to humanity and then to your country. You have to be kind and caring to your fellow man, but also take care of your country. Even though you must take care of your fellow man throughout the world, but protecting your country and the people that are around you becomes a priority over others that don't live in your country. Okay, so it's a little complicated. Mazzini thinks, though, our duties to humanity are more important in a sense. However, he also thinks that the only way we can serve humanity is by first building up a strong country, a strong nation state. And then and only then, with the help of that community, that country community, will we be able to then help humanity. So it's absolutely essential, if we're going to do any good for humanity, to build up our country first, in a sense. And he believes that basically having a strong nation, a strong country, will help fix almost every problem. And the group answer posted by Brianna Mack, who did a nice job as chair, she and the group said that the problems of inequality, happiness, and education could all be fixed if only the Italian people would embrace nationalism, as they did, culminating in 1871. So, all right, moving on now to the Chancellor of Prussia, later the Chancellor of Imperial Germany, Otto von Bismarck, who was so important, as we saw in the lecture, as someone who harnessed the energies of nationalism and put them to work for conservative goals. But as Chancellor, Bismarck actually liberalized laws about voting in Germany, granting all adult men the vote. We call this universal suffrage at the time. All adult men got the vote. And I asked Group 3, how did this relate to his realpolitik policy? Dave Sparks, you had an excellent post on this. I feel as though Bismarck embraced it, universal suffrage, with reluctance, but viewed it as a necessity at the time. He realized that in order to unite the people of Germany and have them support his vision of nationalism, realpolitik, he would need to give them the ability to make that decision on their own. Bismarck counted on the people's nationalistic views to carry the vote, thereby reinforcing their resolve to be united, which came at the price of their liberty. Very interesting. So Bismarck knew and understood that the great mass of people often are very nationalistic, and he realized that giving adult males the vote was a way to harness that incredible power of the people in support of the cause of nationalism. It wasn't so much because he loved the idea of giving everyone, or at least every adult male, the vote, but he realized that it could be a good way to win the people over to support his program of nationalism. All right. Bismarck also talks, though, about how change needs to be slow. And I asked Group 3 why Bismarck felt that way. Chance Stodgill, you had a good post here. For change to happen very slowly in society is in the interest of the great mass of people because it prevents the destruction of the political system. This process is not to be rushed because acceleration can hinder the development and put the government in danger. If at a fast pace, this can lead to absolutism. To keep the system strengthened, it is essential that the great mass desire change that is without harm and beneficial. And again, the great example of change that was too violent and too rapid would have been the French Revolution. And Bismarck wanted a kind of carefully controlled change. He realized there had to be some change in modernization, but he wanted to keep it carefully controlled because if it went too fast, then you could end up with a dictator like Napoleon as the culmination of revolutionary rapid change. All right, finally, I asked what was Bismarck's attitude towards the free press and towards the role of parliaments. Michael Redding had a fine post here. Free press gives we the people an insight to what our government is doing, relying not solely on the information given to us from the government. Investigative journalism is a key in our democratic system that helps to keep our government's doors not closed too tightly. As far as the parliaments go, it helps the common man have a larger say in his government that he pays taxes to. It also helps to keep one person from becoming too strong and allow for variances to happen in a more visualized and supervised setting. Wow, this was written before the 1900s. He surely predicted something big. Yeah, it's interesting too, and I agree. I couldn't agree more, especially about the role of the press. It's kind of tragic that so many newspapers are going out of business, which is opening the way for more fake news that we get through the internet. But in any case, Bismarck believed that there was a place for a free press and also for a freely elected parliament in society. But he saw the relationship between those groups and the government as necessarily somewhat antagonistic. In other words, he didn't believe in absolute press freedom or absolute freedom for lawmakers, but that there would always be a kind of give and take between the government and the press and the parliament that would keep any one group from getting too powerful and seizing absolute power. All right. Groups, the discussions were okay, maybe just a little lackluster this time. I realize nationalism is not the most exciting topic, but it is important that we know this because nationalism was so important for later developments in Europe, especially the rise of fascism. But from here on out, I'd like to see everyone make a commitment. Just try to do one thing in each discussion to make it a little more lively and interesting. Try to disagree with someone. Don't be afraid to do that. Say something provocative, controversial, and let's see if we can really have some fun with these discussions and make them even more interesting and worthwhile going forward. Thanks, everybody.